Guys, and welcome back to another video with Past Papers 101 with Miss Edwards. Today our video will be looking at the integrated science paper for May-June that was done in 2024. So if you're preparing for your exam, this is the paper for you. We are going to be looking at this paper 2 exam. Remember, you have 2 hours and 30 minutes to complete a paper 2 for integrated science. So let us go through this paper. And remember, it consists of 6 questions in 2 sections, and you must answer all questions. So let us begin. Section A. It says answer all 4 questions. 1. Waste can be categorized as domestic, commercial, industrial, and hazardous. State which category of waste best describes single-use plastic. The answer is domestic waste. Remember, single-use plastic is like plastic bags, straws, plastic cups, disposable plates. So those are single use, so it is domestic, meaning used in the home for personal use. Part 2 says define the term landfill. Now, a landfill is a disposable site where solid waste, solid waste such as paper, glass, and metal is buried between layers of dirt and other materials in such a way as to reduce contamination of the surrounding land. So that is what a landfill is, and that is worth 2 marks. Next question asks us to explain why there is an urgency to ban the use of single-use plastics in Caribbean nations. Now, in your country, your government might have been doing something or have put some measures in place to get the country onto the program of reducing waste. In Jamaica, we have our plastic bag, single-use plastic bag ban. So from about 2019, 2020 thereabout, we have not had mass production or mass sales of plastic bags for grocery, So why is there an urgency to use single-use plastics in the Caribbean? Well, there is an urgency to ban single-use plastics in order to protect the environment and human health. They are harmful to wildlife as they cause loss of plant and animal life. It causes pollution to the environment when they are not disposed of correctly, and they contribute to climate change, especially when they are burnt. So those are some of the reasons why there is an urgency to ban single-use plastics in the Caribbean. So good so far. I think these answers or these questions are not hard so far. I think you could use your common sense and answer. So 3 marks for that. The next part of the question asks us to outline 2 things which can be done to minimize the negative impact resulting from the shortage of garbage trucks. So if you don't have garbage trucks, what are 2 things that you could do to minimize the negative impact resulting from, lack of garbage collection? Now, if you are thinking where I'm going, you should be thinking about reducing, reusing, recycling, Those are ways you can minimize waste all the time. So they only ask for 2, so you could speak about reducing, but I have spoken about recycling, which is when you turn waste materials into new products that can then be repurposed, And then reusing waste is when you would reuse the object instead of just having it used one time. So you could reuse shopping bags or jars for storage, So those are the things that CSEC wants to pull from you. They don't ask you directly what is reuse and reduce and recycle, but if they're asking you of any way in which you can minimize waste, you can always turn to those 3. And that's 4 marks. 4 marks for just giving 2 of those minimization techniques. Now, we have our graph question, and if you have been following this channel, I have been telling you all the time, prepare for graphs. CXC Integrated Science has a built-in graph every single year. All right. Now, the administration of the Mount Glory Secondary School has decided to monitor the amount of garbage generated on the school compound. Table 1 shows the results of the garbage monitoring. Table 1, and here we have the results. So it gives us two columns, one that contains or has information for the time in weeks, and the other column, the amount of garbage in pounds that you collect for each week. Now it goes on to ask us that on the grid provided on page 7, you're going to plot a graph of time against the amount of the amount of garbage generated to represent the data in table 1. You must draw a smooth curve through the plot points. And this question is worth a whopping 8 marks. All right. Now, before we get to the graph, let us look at this question. It says, state one of the trends evident in the graph. Now, you don't even have to go to the graph to view a trend. A trend is just a pattern that you can identify, right? What's something that you recognize about the data based on what you see? And you can find it usually from the table that they give you. Now, when we look at the weeks from 1 to 10 and the amount of garbage collected, what do you realize about the numbers? Take a moment and look. Even though you're seeing my answers, you can see that from week 5 or from week 5, yes, there has been a gradual decline in the amount of garbage that is generated. So I have the amount of garbage declined every week for 6 weeks straight, right? And that's from week 5 to week 10, right? So that is worth 1 mark. Now, the next part of the question, we're going to do our graph. Now, remember, your graph is worth 8 marks. So the first thing that you should be thinking about is to have a title there. This is also going to show us that they gave us the numbers for the vertical side of our graph, right? 10, 20, 30, going all the way up to 100 and 200, right, on the left, right? And they left a space there. So based on the numbers here and based on the numbers in your table, you would know that the data that they're representing there would have to be amount of garbage, because amount of garbage goes all the way up to 175 being its highest amount. So we know for a fact that this is the side of the graph that is representing amount of garbage in pounds. So you must put your labels, people. I'm telling you, make sure that the labels are there. If CXC doesn't put the label, you put the label, because they're giving you marks for your labels, right? And your label is just telling them what data is being represented on the side of the graph or on the axis. And we know this is our y-axis, right? So I have amount of garbage in pounds, and then at the horizontal end of the graph at the bottom, we realize that they left it blank. So it is up to you to put in the data. So here we know the graph is short, so it must mean that every 1 centimeter represents 1 week. And remember, I said if graph is just not your thing, go to your teacher, say, sir, miss, I'm not understanding graphs, and go through, get a question, sit on your own, come back, see if your graph looks like mine. So we have the numbers here. Each of these brighter lines would represent where a centimeter ends. All right. So I have 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10 displaying weeks for the time part of the graph. So all we need to do now is plot the points. And I already explained in so many of my videos. If you have not watched those videos on my graph questions, go and check them out. So on week 1, the amount of garbage collected was 125 pounds. So all you have to do is use your graph, find week 1, which is represented by this line going up, and then you're going to find 125 on the other scale right here, and this is where 125 would fall, because it must be in between 120 and 130, right? So 125 could not be too close to 120, and it could not be too close to 130. It would have to be somewhere in the middle, right? And as I said, my graphs, they are done on the computer. When you have your graph paper in front of you, you will be more precise, but it should look something like this. So all of the points that are on the table have been done up, and they are all in red and they are circled. Now, those points would have to be your responsibility. So all you'd have to do is match weeks with the amount of garbage for every week, and then you'd get your points. But remember, in the question, it says you must draw a smooth curve through the points that you plot. So after you have made all your points, this blue line represents your smooth curve. And a smooth curve means that you're going to use your free hand and make a curve through the lines. And a curve is not a line drawn with a ruler. It must be done freehand. The only giveaway that you may have is if you use one of those bending rulers that may be able to give you a clearer line, but I'm telling you, your smooth curve is drawn freehand through the points. So we must not see any ruler lines there, because it must be, again, smooth. So this would be your graph, and your title, graph showing the amount of garbage in pounds produced at the school over a period of 10 weeks. That's an appropriate title. You have your two labels, one for time and one for amount of garbage, and you have your graph. And I think this is a simple graph, which is easy for you to get your 8 marks. All right, so let's move on. Question 2. Right, we're still here. We have a momentum question. So this would be a part of the physics section of your syllabus. It says an accident occurred between a truck with a mass of 3,000 kilograms moving at 25 meters per second and a vehicle with a mass of 5,000 kilograms which was parked. So it says calculate the momentum of the parked vehicle. You must use the formula P equal mass times velocity. So it says calculate the momentum of the parked vehicle. Now what I have done is I have calculated the entire momentum of everything. So what I should have had here was, right, the momentum of the truck. This is the momentum of the truck, 75,000 kilograms per meter per second. And then the momentum of the parked vehicle is 0 kilograms meters per second, right? So this is the momentum of the truck. I did that. And the momentum of the parked vehicle. Down here, I just did it if they asked you for the collision. So I should have probably written collision there. But see there, the momentum of parked vehicle, it's 5,000 kilograms because it's mass times velocity. The vehicle was parked. So if something is parked, that means it does not have any velocity. It's not moving. So it's 0. So 5,000 times 0 is equal to 0. So this is the answer. Right? That's the answer for the question they would have asked you. So the 75,000 would just be if they asked you for the entire collision. I guess my math ran away with me, so I did everything. But 0 would be the answer there for the collision of the momentum, of the parked vehicle. Once something is parked, it has a velocity of 0. So you must read the question, all right? Now state 2 forms of energy. See it there? Kinetic and potential energy. You got your 2 marks. It says before the collision, the truck was speeding out of control down the hill. State the energy transformations which occurred as the garbage truck was moving out of control down the hill before the collision. So when it's asking you for an energy transformation, it's asking you to show, right, which form of energy the object is changing from or has and is changing from, and usually use an arrow to depict that. So remember, if it's a vehicle, it must have some chemical energy, and the fact that it is moving, right, means that it has to be kinetic energy. So the energy conversion there, or energy transformation, would be from chemical energy in the vehicle's engine, right, to kinetic energy. It's movement down the hill. So remember the law of energy conservation. Energy cannot be created, cannot be lost, but it can be transferred from one form to the next. All right. So if energy is not your topic, I am asking that you go and read up on energy, right? And if you have reached this far in the video, remember to share it, send it to your classmates, send it to your teacher, send it to those persons you know are sitting the subject, subscribe, comment, share the video so that you can, spread the information. We want everybody to pass. It's not just a Jamaica thing or a Trinidad thing or a Guyana thing. All persons must get grade 1s in CSEC once you put in the hard work. All right. Question 2. It says figure 1 shows a graph of plant growth over a 7-month period. The heights of the plants are recorded at the end of each month. So we have here, this is our graph. It says month. We have January straight to July. And then on the side, we have height in centimeters. And we see where it goes all the way up to 100 centimeters. So let's look at the question. It says state the total increase in the height of the plants between June and July. You must include the unit in your response. So it's asking us what's the total increase in the height. How much has the height grown between June and July? So let us look. At June, the plant had a height of, what would this be? If the number is between 60 and 80, what would this be? This would be 70, right? So at June, the plant was at 70. And then in July, we realized that it went up to 100. So they're asking, what was the total growth between June and July? If it said 30, then that is correct. But remember, it also says you must include the unit. So it's 30 centimeters. All right. So that would be your answer. And that's 1 mark. Easy, not true? It says estimate the height of the plants for the month of April. Now let's look at April. There is no point on the graph for April, but we can estimate. All you have to do is look at where April goes up and where it might touch the line, and wherever you touch the line going up from April, you go across, and it would show us that at April the plant would have probably had a height of 50, right, centimeters, because 50 is smack between 40 and 60. So this is teaching us how to interpret from graphs. It says state 2 conditions which are needed to promote plant growth, and the answers are sunlight, moisture, or water, right? And that's for 2 marks. Easy question, right? Let's move on. It says explain what happens in the female reproductive system during the menstrual cycle. During a menstrual cycle, the female reproductive system prepares itself for potential pregnancy by thickening the lining of the uterus with the help of hormones estrogen and progesterone. If pregnancy doesn't occur, this lining sheds as a period, marking the start of a new cycle where the process repeats itself. So, ladies and males, you must know what happens in the menstrual cycle. It's a part of your syllabus, but it's also a part of life. So, during the menstrual cycle, the uterus or the womb, right, is always preparing itself for pregnancy. That's the whole point of puberty, to make you sexually mature. Now, every month, the uterus thickens itself so that in the case that you get pregnant, the womb is ready for the baby. So it's just as a mother preparing a nursery for the baby, right? If you don't get pregnant, your womb will shed its lining. The uterus wall will shed because no baby came in that month. So it will clean out, right? So all of those walls will break down and be discharged as the blood, which we know as the period. And then the process repeats itself. So that is what happens during menstrual cycle. Now, next part, it says, Mary is taking an estrogen-based contraception pill. Explain how the pill acts as a contraceptive. So we all know about oral contraceptives, right? Or chemical contraceptives, right? This is where you must ingest something that regulates hormone control. Now, the estrogen pill, how it works is that it prevents ovulation. And ovulation is just a release of the egg. And how many eggs do we have being released every month? One, right? One egg is released from an ovary every month, and you have two ovaries, one on the left and one on the right. And every month, right, when this egg is to be released, it is controlled by a hormone. Now, what your body does when it gets this estrogen-based pill is, due to the presence of the hormone estrogen, your uterus wall remains thick. So it kind of tricks or mimics your body into thinking that, hey, I'm pregnant. So the hormone keeps the wall of the uterus thick. So instead of the wall of the uterus shedding its lining when you don't get pregnant, this hormone estrogen causes it to remain thick. And your body will your body will tell your brain to stop releasing eggs. So if there is nowhere you're going to release an egg, that's why a woman cannot get pregnant while pregnant under normal circumstances. Because when you're pregnant, this hormone estrogen is being produced at a high rate. So your body says there's no need to produce another egg because we have already accomplished pregnancy. So your body is tricked by this pill into thinking that you're pregnant when you're not really pregnant. And this is why, if you pay attention, I guess you're all teenagers, and for those who are adults, you know, when you take a contraceptive pill, it causes the female to gain a lot of weight, and also you might have morning sickness, so it mimics pregnancy. So this is why you do not get pregnant on this pill, because it releases that hormone that prevents ovulation, right? So that's 3 marks. Identify 2 natural methods of contraception. The 2 natural methods we know are the rhythm method and abstinence. The rhythm method is when you take a note of your menstrual cycle and your ovulation cycle, and you know when your egg will be released and when you have your period, and you track it, so you know the times you can get pregnant and when you can't, so you will schedule your sexual experiences based on that. And then abstinence now is, we know, no sex at all, and you can't get pregnant from both of those natural methods, right? Next part of the question says, explain how an increase in population size can affect the Earth's natural resources. So natural resources, we know that the Earth has water, food, shelter, all of those things. So how is an increase in the population going to affect the amount of resources we have? An increase in that population will cause a depletion of Earth's resources. This is because the larger the population, the more resources will be needed to meet individuals' needs. More people consume and generate waste at a higher rate, essentially putting increased pressure on the planet's resources. So that is why we are always telling persons, try to prevent waste as much as possible in the case of population growth, right? We don't want to lose out because of a lack of resource. Now we're at question 3, so we're halfway through our paper. It says, identify the parts of the skin labeled 1, 2, and 3. What is 1? What is 2? What is 3? Guess for yourself. All right, you can pause the video. Part 1 is the epidermis. Part 2 is the dermis. And part 3 is your fatty tissue or layer. So 3 marks, 3 simple answers. It says use the diagram above to explain what happens to the skin when a person enters a cold environment. It says the skin responds by constricting blood vessels, right? And it just means tightening up your blood vessels. You are going to you're going to have reduced blood flow to the surface of your skin, and this is going to help conserve body heat. And the pores on your skin also close up to trap heat, and this causes the hairs on your skin to stand, and it also causes what you call goosebumps. So it is all a response due to change in temperature, especially cold temperature. Right? Next part of the question. It asks, Jane has filament bulbs inside her home, and filament bulbs are what we also know as incandescent bulbs, those old-time light bulbs. She finds that her blue dress looks dull when she is inside and looks brighter when she is outside. State which terms best describe the types of light that can be found outside and inside. So inside light is artificial or incandescent, and outside light is natural light. Now, part 2 of the question says, outline how the 2 different types of light contribute to the observed differences in the color of Jane's dress. Now, natural light. How does the dress look in natural life? What's the difference? Now, natural light, right, from the sun contains what we call a full spectrum of visible light wavelengths, meaning it has a broader range of colors. Remember, you have different colors that make up light that can be absorbed by different materials, thus making Jane's dress brighter to the eyes. So the mere fact that there is a full spectrum of light wave at different wavelengths and colors in natural light makes the dress appear more brighter to the eyes. But in artificial light, those have a limited spectrum of light, right? So less colors are in those lights, and it's often focused on specific wavelengths depending on the type of bulb, which can affect how objects look, thus making Jane's dress duller to the eyes. So it's all because of the amount of light that is the colors that are available in the light. So natural light contains a full spectrum, but artificial light contains a limited spectrum. And if you're not clear on light and how it is absorbed and how it is reflected and how we see color, please go back to your syllabus. All right, there's a whole chapter in your syllabus about light. Now it asks us in part 3 to explain why the government is promoting a change from filament bulbs to LED ones. And I guess most persons, if you check your home, you have a lot of LED bulbs in your home, and they're just saying, why is it that the government, or they're asking, explain some of the reasons why the government is promoting, changing so you can get LED lights than the original or old-time lights that we know. This is because, one, LED lights are better because they are more energy efficient, so we don't have a lot of waste. If you know LED bulbs, they are able to last you way longer too. So that's our second point. They produce less heat. If you check out an LED bulb in your home, it doesn't matter how long you have it plugged in or the switch is on. You can go and just touch the bulb and it will not burn you. Unlike the older ones, they used to generate a whole lot of heat. Another reason, they don't contain any harmful mercury, while fluorescent or old-time bulbs would contain mercury, which is a poison, right? 5, more easily controlled to produce specific color temperatures and light patterns. So remember, LED bulbs, you can change the brightness, dimness, the color. We know those LED lights that people always put in their rooms, they look so lovely. So those are some of the reasons why the government is promoting the change from fluorescent to LEDs, right? Yes. So when we look at the old-time bulbs, we realize that they are not efficient. So we're at question 4. It says, write a simple word equation to show the reaction which occurs when iron is placed in hydrochloric acid. And when it says simple word equation, this is what they're asking you for. Metal plus acid gives you hydrogen plus salt. This is the equation that shows us what happens when a metal reacts with an acid. And if you have not reached this part of your syllabus, or you have reached this part of your syllabus, please make sure you know what happens when a metal reacts with an acid, when acid reacts with a base, when yeah, so those two. And I think when steam reacts with metals, if my memory serves me right. So that's for 4 marks. Just knowing that equation would give you 4 marks. Part B of the question asks us, or tells us, 3 spoons were used in an experiment that was conducted to determine the time it takes for petroleum jelly, which is Vaseline, to melt when heat is applied. The results are shown in the following table. So we have spoon A, spoon B, spoon C. The time is 5, 10, 5, 15, and 30 minutes. State which of the spoons is most likely a metal, and you must outline a reason for your answer. And just by looking at the table, we know spoon A is the metal, but why? Why is spoon A the metal? And it all comes down to the amount of time it takes for the jelly to melt. Metals are excellent conductors of heat because they contain free electrons. So you must know why they conduct heat. Well, you know, it's because of the free electrons that are able to transfer heat to other nearby electrons. So the heat would take the least time to move through the metal. So in a metal, it's almost as if you have electrons lined up, and once the heat reaches them, they get so excited that they have to pass it on to the electron beside them, and so it flows much easier. Yeah, right? Now the next part, and that's for 3 marks. The next part of the question asks us to state which of the spoons would be considered a good insulator, and you must outline a reason for your answer. Now, an insulator there, would it be spoon A, spoon B, or spoon C? If you said spoon C, that is correct. This is because of the time it took for the heat to melt the petroleum jelly on spoon C. Spoon C is the insulator. Insulators are very poor heat conductors, so it would take the least time for the jelly to melt. And this is also because they do not contain free electrons like metals, all right? And that's 3 marks. Part C of the question. Pam and Sam look forward to their weekend fishing trips each week. Sam always walks with his trusted compass to ensure they do not get lost at sea. Outline how a compass works as a navigational device. Now, a compass has a magnetic needle attached to it, which can rotate freely, right? All of us know what a compass looks like. The magnet always points to north. South direction, which is marked on compasses, thus helps in finding direction. So once you have a compass, the reason it will always point to what we call the true north is because it gives you a realistic picture of where you are. You're always south of the needle pointing to north, so it would show you that west is to your left and east is to your right, but it usually just has the needle pointing north south, so you have a general idea if you need to move more east to reach your direction, move more westward to reach your direction, or north or even southward. So when we look at a compass, that is how it works. A magnetic needle, right? And it points to the true north because of the gravitational field strength of the earth, right? Now, part 2, it says state the function of the following navigational devices. So we have sonar. Sonar is a technology that uses sound waves to detect and map objects under water. Sorry. So when you're watching those movies and you see them tracking under the water, the submarine, and you see a little beep beep, they are using sonar. Radar is a system that uses radio waves to detect and track objects such as aircrafts, ships, and weather formations. Radar is what helps us to map out our hurricanes and also to provide aircraft with information regarding their flights, and also for ships. Now, GPS, everybody knows what GPS stands for, hopefully, Global Positioning System. And the GPS uses satellite signals, which are in the Earth orbit, to determine location. So it would receive a signal from the satellite, and then it would just generate to show us where we are on the map. It's so cool that we have all of these devices that help us to help navigate our way through Earth or on Earth. Now we are at section B. How are the questions so far? I guess some of these questions, based on my observation, they are taken from the back of the syllabus. So I would suggest persons start to focus on the back of the syllabus right now. So if you are still somewhere closer to the front, skip to the back. So question 5. State one device which is used to harvest the energy of the sun. And if you don't know what a solar panel is, are you even living in the Caribbean? Right? That's 1 mark. It says outline one factor which can negatively impact the use of the following sources of energy in the Caribbean. So solar. So they're asking, what are some of the negative impacts of us using solar? So another factor, that can negatively impact the use of it is we know that in the Caribbean, the weather can change. The weather can negatively affect the amount of solar energy to be harvested. Storms or cloudy days can reduce the amount of solar energy produced. So that's a negative impact that we get from the weather on solar use. And also for wind, one factor that can negatively impact is the inconsistent winds. So it's not every day that we're going to get a lot of wind. And another thing that can impact our use of wind energy too is the location. So if your country is not one with a lot of mountains, then it's going to be difficult for you to generate that wind speed. You need to get the turbines going. And it could also be expensive to construct a wind vane, right? So those are the setbacks for wind. It says, due to the high cost of electricity in the Caribbean region, governments are looking at alternative sources of energy. Discuss the suitability of hydroelectric power as an alternative source of energy in the Caribbean. And we know that hydroelectric energy is harvested from the movement of water, right? Now, it's asking us to discuss the suitability. So is hydroelectricity suitable for the Caribbean? No, hydroelectricity is suitable for countries that have large, powerful waterfalls. The action of the falls can be used to move turbines to generate electricity. If there are no waterfalls, then the countries could construct dams or at large rivers, and that could be done. The only setback would be if the country does not have a large natural waterway to power the hydroelectric plant. So it's only viable for countries that have water that is moving over a great gradient, so a good waterfall that could be used. So if you don't have that, or a large river or dams, then it would not be feasible for the country. So your country must have water. It says the following shows Terry's electric usage and bill over 3 months. And it just shows us what his 3 appliances that he uses. So he uses a refrigerator, a TV, and a washing machine. And it tells us the energy each appliance uses, the number of hours it is used for, and the cost per day per cents for each kilowatt, and the amount that everything totals at the end of the month. Now, Terry has had his refrigerator for 8 years. Discuss why the refrigerator may be using more energy every month. And if we go back to the table, let's look at the refrigerator. How much energy is it using? So in the first month, the refrigerator is using 0.20 kilowatts. All right. For month 2, it was 0.30 kilowatts. And then for month 3, 0.50 kilowatts. So why is it that the fridge may be using more energy every month? And it tells us that Terry has had his refrigerator for 8 years. Now, an appliance uses more energy as it ages. This is because its internal components wear down over time, and this can lead to decreased efficiency. And it's just like human beings or bodies. The older we get, the less efficient we can move and do things. So it is the same thing for an appliance. The older it gets, it will need more energy to complete its tasks. And this could lead to decreased efficiency, such as worn seals, maybe worn out parts, malfunctioning motors, and outdated control systems. Right now, we have refrigerators that have televisions built in them and touch screens for operation. Right? So a terrace fridge would be nothing like that, right? And this requires more energy to perform the same function as a newer appliance with modern technology. So just the mere fact that it is aging, that the appliance 8 years old, tells us that it's just being worn out, and once the parts are worn out, it would take more energy to complete its task. So that would warrant you 4 marks. Next part of the question asks us to suggest 2 things that Terry can do to reduce the electrical usage of the refrigerator. So 2 things he can do. 1, door management. Everybody knows if you're in a Caribbean household and you're in the fridge too long, the first thing you're going to hear is the mother calling out, close the fridge. So door management. He needs to minimize opening the fridge door and close it quickly to prevent warm air from entering. Next thing he needs to do is seal check. Regularly inspect the door seals for any gaps or damage to ensure a tight seal. You know that once the seal of your refrigerator is broken, it's going to let out all the cold air, and then it's not going to be efficient, and it's going to use way more energy to cool all of the things you have in there. So he must maintain door checks and check his seals. And the last question, let's go. We are at question 6. It says, list 3 physical properties of pure water. And if you know water, you know that it's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. And that is for 3 marks. The next part of the question shows us a diagram of the water cycle. And it asks us to identify the processes labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I want you to take a minute, look at the diagram. How many of these processes do you know? What's going on at part 1? What's going on at part 2? What's going on at part 3 and 4? All right. If your brains are finished, let's check. At part 1, evaporation, water, liquid changing to gas. 2, condensation. We have gas going to, it's cooling down and going back to liquid to form clouds, right? 3, precipitation, rain falling. And 4, who found out what 4 is? That would be transpiration, because it's coming from the trees and it's going up. So evaporation, condensation, precipitation, transpiration. And that's going to give you 4 marks. Easy question. Part B of the question says, Figure 4 shows the orbits of the Earth and Moon, and it asks us to discuss how the Earth and Moon remain in orbit as shown in Figure 4. Now, in Figure 4, it's showing us the Moon going around the Earth and the Earth orbiting the Sun. So it asks us, how is it that the Earth and Moon remain in orbit? Now, the Earth and Moon stay in orbit around each other due to the force of gravity. Where the Earth's gravitational pull on the Moon keeps it in a continuous falling motion around the Earth, while the Moon's forward momentum prevents it from crashing into the Earth. This balance of forces creates the orbit. So it's almost like a pull on each other, and it keeps them going around. I would want to say, I'm trying to think of earthly example to give you an idea of what it is like. It's almost as if a person is going to swing, like when they're doing a hammer throw, right? And the person is swinging this long ball, heavy metal ball, which is attached to the end of a chain. The chain would represent the gravitational pull, and the person would represent the earth, and the metal ball would represent the moon. So if the moon, which is the metal ball, keeps going around because gravity, the chain, attaches it to earth, and earth is there moving around as well because that pull also has an effect on the earth. So it's like they need each other to keep going in this orbit, right? It's constantly spinning. If that is unclear, well, go back to your notebook, take your time, see if you can figure it out, but you have to study. Now, the next part of our question, I think this is the final part. It says a volcano erupted in country X after the country experienced minor earthquakes 2 weeks before. Discuss whether or not earthquakes always result in volcanoes erupting. Now, the answer to that is no. Volcanoes are not always the cause of earthquakes, but they can be related in complex ways. Earthquakes and volcanoes are both caused by the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates, right? So those are plates that are beneath the Earth, and they shift from time to time, which results in earthquakes and volcano eruptions. And volcanic eruptions can trigger earthquakes, and earthquakes can trigger volcanic eruptions, right? Now, that would give you a value of 4 marks, and that is the end of the test. So let's do a recap of all the topics that we saw presented in this 2024 paper. We saw volcanic and earthquake activity. We see here orbits of Earth and the moon. The water cycle is also there, properties of water as well. We also saw some electrical questions, so electricity is a must. We also saw energy questions, right? So there is a lot of energy there. Energy questions, alternative energy sources. There's also navigational devices there. Also metals, acids and bases and mixtures topics. There is also some lighting questions. We have sense organs there. The skin was a part of this paper. Population growth. We also found some sexual reproduction in humans there. Plant growth there. Momentum questions. We had our graph. Typical. We always expect a graph. There was also waste management when it asked about, that was the first question. Now, these topics are found at the back of the syllabus, and it's an indication to us that there may be a repeat of certain questions like these in the 2025 exam, or they might just pull a string and flip the script and get it all from the first half of the syllabus. So we never know. So students, we're asking that you try your best to study all of the syllabus. We don't want anything to catch you unaware. Please remember to share this video, like, give it a thumbs up, comment, and remember, with God, all results can be distinctions. All the best.